Hello and welcome to Chat with Traders. I'm ChartGal Lori and I am hosting Mr. Blake Morrow. I've gotten to talk to him on a couple of other, interviews with his channel, with Coach Pinkert and with Blake himself. So I just want to welcome you. Thank you for agreeing to talk to me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Lori.
All right. So I'm going to jump right into it. How did you get into trading?
So we got to start at the very beginning.
Right when Jesus left the manger.
Right. Actually, you know, it's a long story. It's an interesting story. I was fresh out of the military, out of the Marine Corps, and I was 22 years old. Started college, and you know, when you start college 4 years behind everybody else, all your friends are just leaving college, right? So, you know, I'm in the first couple of years of my college education in Arizona, in the Phoenix area. If you're familiar with like Arizona State University,
I am.
And yeah, and I was doing that back in the 90s, and it was mid 90s, actually 90, 95, 96. And one of my best buddies, he became a stockbroker, and he's like, "Hey, you should be a stockbroker." And I'm like, "Why? I don't know anything about the stock market." He's like, "Oh, you know, you have the gift of gab." I'm like, well, "Okay." And he's like, "Don't worry, you don't need to know anything. Just come take your Series 7. See if you can get a job, get your Series 7. You'll be good to go." So I think 1995, I got my Series 7 in 63, the state license, and then my Series 7 securities license. And then I did that for a while, and then we had a mutual friend who was extremely wealthy in the insurance industry, and there's a magazine that was a Forbes magazine, and on the front cover was the pioneers of day trading, block trading, these guys out of Houston, and they were pioneering the day trading industry in 96. And I took that magazine with my friend, and we went to my friend that had a lot of money, and we said, "Hey, I'd like to trade your money, and this is how we're going to do it." And my buddy had learned how to trade from a market maker, bringing a company public back in 95. So we started trading this guy's money, and that was in November of 96 is when I stepped foot into block trading in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I haven't looked back since. It's been quite a whirlwind. So,
would you recommend trading other people's money to start, especially a friend's?
No, well, not really. It depends. You have to also think about my age too. At that point, I was only 25, 26 years old. So I was pretty young. Like a lot of Wall Street people nowadays, that come out of MIT, or they come out of Boston College or wherever they're at. They go into Wall Street and they're young. We in the military or in the Marine Corps, which I was in, we call it young, dumb, and full of well, you can fill in the blank there. And with trading, I think you get a lot of that I'm young, I'm arrogant, I take risks. And so
very aggressive and very not risk averse at all.
Not at all. You get married, have a couple of kids, and you plant yourself, you become a little bit more risk averse, right? But I was pretty young back then, and trading somebody else's money made a lot of sense. And now I've done and just so you know, I started off with 50 grand, and in 6 months I turned that 50 grand into 25,000. So yeah, lost half of it within the first 6 months.
Okay, turned it into, i.e., divided it in half. Okay.
Correct. There you go. That's a good way to look at it, right? And so from there, now fortunately, I was in the middle of a dot-com boom. So it was 1997, 98. That 25,000 turned into about 1.5 million in the next few years, and I split the profits half and half with my investors. So did it make sense at that time for me? Was I in the right place at the right time? Yeah, it's kind of like being a crypto trader in the 2015 to 17, right?
Yeah.
You're right. So I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, but it really propelled me into where I'm at today over the years. There's a whole, the story continues on, and it goes on for a while, and I don't need to bore you with all the
It
details, but
sounds like a Rascal Flatts song. God bless the broken road. I feel like that's been everybody's trading journey. It's like, oh, you go down that one, dead end. Okay, go here, but you never quit. You just keep going.
yeah, and going back to your original question, I actually just up until 2 years ago, I traded for a small private equity group out of Greenwich, Connecticut, and some handpicked traders. And I traded with that company and the sister company for about 4 years, almost 5 years. As I was starting Forex analytics at that time, fortunately, I have business partners that took on the burden of running Forex analytics as I was trading full time this private fund. So I learned a lot from that experience because it was such a large amount of money. But I've traded my own money for the majority of my career, and I continue to do so today. And I prefer that. But and it's such a loaded question, because if I was trading at a bank, I might feel differently, where I'm not so concerned about the bank's money. But when you're trading for somebody you know personally, I take it a little bit harder than most people. And I did back in the 90s. I did back recently. It's rather stressful when you know the people that you are making, but a lot of times losing money for, and it kept me up, and I didn't sleep as well as I do now when I manage my own capital, and I know what my risk is, and I know it's me, and that's so. But everybody comes from a different point of view. We have a prop trading firm side business for Forex analytics, and it allows people to get started and trade our capital. But people know us as not an institution, but more as a company versus me. And so when you know the person personally, you shake their hand, you see them every day, it can weigh on you.
Absolutely. So if I'm doing the math right, then you've been trading at least 28 years-ish.
Well, I started as a stockbroker. I really started trading in 96. So it was November of 96. So let me do the math here. It's about 26 years roughly. So yeah.
Wait, November of 96. I know this answer because my daughter it will be 27 November of 96. So she was born then. So what trait has kept you in the game this long? Because we know the majority of traders, they're done. The saying goes, which I don't know if there's any study behind this, that 90% of traders lose 90% of their money in the first 90 days. And I think a lot of that's hogwash, but I do think a lot of people, they just fell out in 6 months to a year. What trait do you have that made you more successful?
Well, first and foremost, let me commend you and your group for what you're doing, because back when I started trading, you traded next to people, and we didn't have Zoom, we didn't have GoToWebinar, which was before Zoom, and we didn't have even the internet previous to that. I mean, we were just on the internet, the infancy of the internet at that point. So when people say that 90% of traders fail, I actually don't disagree. Okay. I believe what we do is we reshape the bell curve with what we do at Forex Analytics, and probably what your group does. Because when you're with another, you couldn't call them a mentor type of group, when you're around a community where you can talk to other traders, leverage their ideas, understand what they're thinking, be able to ask questions. That's what's really most important. And that's kind of what we do at Forex Analytics, is it's more of a community than anything. But, when you don't have that and you try to do it on your own, that's where the failure rate comes in, because traders innately, they don't have good discipline. They don't have good risk management skills, and they don't have the tenacity to stick with it. So I think those three traits alone will get you really far in this business.
I agree. That's an absolutely good point. I had Jared Tendler on my last interview. He wrote The Mental Game of Trading, a book that I absolutely adore. And I asked him a question, and he answered it, of course, very intelligently. I want to ask you this. I don't know that I actually agree with him. So my mentor, Charting Man Dan, who started the ChartGuys, he says not everybody can be a trader. Sometimes I would be a terrible painter. You would not hire me to paint your dog's house. I'm a terrible painter. Could I focus and get a little better? Yes, it's just not what my suit my personality. I have attention to detail where it matters with money, but not with house stuff. Ugh. So do you think anybody can be a trader? If you're struggling with some of your personality traits, do you think some of them can be overcome, or some people are just not built to be traders?
That's a good question. And I don't, since I'm only me, it's hard to
Sample size of
answer
one
that.
at the moment.
But right, but I've seen a lot of traders come and go over the years, and that's a fact. And I think the common, the person who's going to fail the most is just somebody who is just an undisciplined trader. And if you were expecting some sort of glamorous, intelligent response from me, you're just not
no, that's
get
exactly what my answer is someone who has a gambling tendency or is undisciplined. Some of those things can't be overcome from my experience.
Yeah, I think you're on the right path. And then also, risk management skills. And that's something that really can be taught. So, but you have to understand like the market you're in and being able to, and that's something that over the last, I want to say 5 or 6 years, we've gone from a very low volatility environment to a very high volatility environment from pre-COVID, post-COVID, central bank induced liquidity to ups and downs. We've seen a lot of volatility back to like no volatility. So if you know what type of market you're in and knowing when you should be pressing or leveraging up a little bit, that's good. And that's one of the things that we focus on quite a bit in our community is, hey, market's really choppy, play the ranges, play small, it's okay to be wrong. It's not okay to stay wrong, and that type of mentality. And then when things start really trending and you start seeing breakouts, kind of like the S&P this week, that's where you're like, okay, look, if this can sustain, we can press a little bit more, that type of thing.
What is your favorite type of trading? Day trading or swing trading?
Swing trading. And that's really based on my job. It's not, well, a couple of reasons. I prefer swing trading because I can trade smaller and look for a little bit bigger swings, but also because we do a lot of training sessions. I have to post analysis all day long to our application, to our community. I take a lot of calls. I run Forex analytics as well. I do a lot of interviews like you're doing here. So it doesn't give me the opportunity to really scalp the market like I know how to do. But that's a more high stress type of environment where at my age, it's not conducive to my age and longevity. Let's put it that way.
Mental capital that you spend scalping. I'm trying to slow mine down definitely as well. Do you have any charts? I think I have screen share enabled and I did not give you a heads up on this. And if you don't want to show charts, that's fine. But
sure, I can show charts. I'm not sure what you want to see, but
what names are you looking at right now? Like what setups do you like? Recent trades that you've taken?
Well, okay, so that's a great question, actually, and one of the things that I think is imperative to what I've done over the years and over I always tell people I've been trading about a quarter century, so 25 years roughly, especially the last couple of years, that's just kind of like my go-to answer. I've learned a lot. And I've learned a lot from listening to a lot of podcasts, reading a lot of books, listening to, financial news throughout the course of the day. It's kind of always in my ear. It's CNBC has been like literally in my right ear probably for, 20 years straight. That's just because it's a kind of a product of being on a trading floor.
How have you listened to Joe Kernan all those years? I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, it was easier. Believe me, it was easier back in the 90s and early 2000s than it is today. But I do end up, diversifying, let's call it, away from that. But one of the things that I've learned is being able to have some sort of macro backdrop or theme, some sort of thematic that you're trading on, that will complement what you're looking at technically to give you more of a confidence in your swing trade. So for example, like I know the Bank of Japan is probably within a month to a couple months away from shifting monetary policy. And so what I tend to look at is I tend to think about what the implications of that, which would happen to be, and I'll do it for you here. It's like looking at the yen. what that would actually do is actually strengthen the yen. This is the yen futures, by the way. So what that would do is actually strengthen the yen over time if the BOJ kind of adjusts their monetary policy to fit the current inflationary environment that we're feeling globally. Even Japan is feeling a little bit of inflation for the first time in 20 some odd years. So when that happens, then I start thinking about how that is tailored towards, you know, what risk is doing, what the Nikkei is doing, what the S&P is doing. So it's, for me, it's like putting together a bunch of puzzle pieces and fitting them together and then trying to establish a position in anticipation of a move happening. And that just is more of experience, if you will.
What percentage of technicals weigh into your decision? And I understand that's a specific question, and it's just an estimate. So you have this fundamental things weighing on you. You use that for the framework to kind of zoom into a trade. And then how much do technicals weigh on it?
All of it.
Okay.
All of it. So technicals is always the am I going to stay or am I going to go? You know, that's it. So the macro theme or the backdrop behind being bullish yen at current levels might also be because we pivoted off of a key Fibonacci ratio here at the 618 retracement on a weekly basis. You know, you're seeing divergent relative strength, you know, on this last move. You know, those are the types of things that might lend me to a technical view of, okay, I do want to be bullish the yen. Do I have a macro backdrop that mimics that? I do. And so therefore I will start to leg into a position. And this is when I can position myself for several weeks, or I can position myself for a few days. It really depends on kind of what I'm going for at that time. But you know, one of the things that I've been doing just the last couple of weeks, I'll just put it that way, is if you go to the dollar yen, you know, I knew this 138 level was going to be a big breakout point. I played it to the long side, and now I've kind of shifted gears and I'm playing it to the short side, not because the technicals are leaning that way, because I actually still see a little bit of a higher target around the 142.60 level, but because risk, in this case, the S&P, the Nikkei, all of those, you know, assets are continuing to break higher, but the yen isn't weakening. That means there's a divergence of this correlation. So therefore, it leads me to believe that if we do see some sort of setback in the S&P over the course of the next, you know, couple of weeks, we might see us, you know, trade back below 4,200. That should strengthen the yen. Yields should come down. One of the other things that I'm looking at, but you know, I happen to look at most asset classes where if you're trading currencies, or excuse me, individual stocks, you might just be looking at Apple. You just might be looking at Apple, maybe the S&P, or what's happening in the NASDAQ 100. Me, I'm looking at, you know, equal weighting indexes of the entire S&P versus just the S&P as a whole. I'm looking at volatility. I'm looking at yields. I look at the bond market. I take into account pretty much what's happening globally, because we live in a global market, Lori, and we don't live in a little bubble. Like
we don't live in a vacuum. Absolutely. And I look at all those correlations. I actually have a table that I use to measure all the correlations, the Hang Seng, the DAX overnight. When I wake up, what did they do overnight? What's going on in crypto? Sometimes they, you know, they diverge, and then sometimes they travel together. So I'm constantly assessing those correlations. And I'm not going to say that I do it as well as a Forex trader. I trade currency, but I trade the futures. I don't know why I've never traded Forex. I mean, you may bring me over to the dark side.
You know, a lot of people, well, here's the problem. If you have a bit of a trading problem, you might stay up all night. And that's a bit of an issue for currency traders. It's a 24-hour market. One of the things I really miss about trading equities, when I exclusively traded equities up until about 2001, it's like, you know, we didn't have pre-market, post-market trading. I mean, you had a little bit, but it's super illiquid. It wasn't even worth it. Like you couldn't, unless you were positioned pre or post market, you just couldn't, there was no liquidity. So basically when the market closed, I'm like, oh,
I'm done.
You know, I'm done. But in currencies, you don't finish. And
I've been a crypto trader since May of 2017, and I had to pump the brakes for family reasons, because it's just too much 24/7.
It can be. Yeah, that's currencies for you. But currencies, you know, it's the biggest market in the world. It tends to be, you know, less driven by headlines. I'd say headlines do move the market, obviously, but I don't have to worry about like a CEO going rogue or layoffs or, you know, earnings beats. Or I'm looking at more of a macro backdrop of the entire globe and what's happening with interest rates, because ultimately what happens with rates is what's going to move the dollar one way or the other. So
I got one more question for you, and then I
sure.
want you to tell us about a little bit more about your company. What is the most memorable trade you've ever had?
Well, the most memorable trade was the one that actually it was the one that got me to like my kickstart. Okay, I'll start from the beginning. So back in like 97 or so, I was starting to trade more aggressively, and that's because everything from Amazon to Mindspring and Earthlink and Yahoo and all of these internet stocks started flying. So it was much easier when volatility picks up like that, much easier to make money. So my 20,000 that I told you with, it grew to like, I don't know, it was like around 80 or 100,000, and I was finally getting into my groove. And my buddy told me, we got to buy this stock called GoToNet. He's like, I know the owner, and I know the guy that started it, and I know of him, and people know of him, and we brought this company public, and I think it's a company that we need to own. And so anyway, I ended up buying a bunch of this stock really cheap, on the cheap, and I just kind of had it sitting there for months and months and months, and for no particular reason other than I got to own these internet stocks, and this is the one I just kind of clung on to. Well, one morning, the stock went from, I don't know, 8 to like 80, and I had a bunch of it. And for me that day, it felt like it was like, I mean, I was so young, I was in my late 20s, felt like I hit the lottery that day. But what it really did is when I locked in profits and I sat back, it really kickstarted my career. That was probably like my most memorable of all time. But like, some of my I've been in some pretty bad trades too. So those seem to be more memorable than all my good ones.
The most memorable ones for me were the ones I didn't take. When Elon announced that he bought Bitcoin, I'm like you, I'm constantly listening to CNBC. It's 4 a.m. my time. I see it on CNBC. He buys Bitcoin, and I am so loyal to our community. I go type it in the community. Elon buys Bitcoin. And then I'm looking at the chart. I'm like, you dummy, you didn't buy it. Why didn't you buy Bitcoin? So I have a couple of those, like GameStop, the high short float. I noticed it in December, and I posted to our mods, this isn't right. This short float isn't right. And I cannot figure it out. And I didn't take the trade, but you learn. And when you see it again, what I've found is usually I hit it when I see it again, those scenarios. But
I would say probably like my my most memorable trade, and this happened to be in equities too. I have a lot of currency memorable moments, and they're usually pretty wild moves that just like flash crash. When that happened, I happened to be short I was long yen and short a bunch of yen pairs, just absolutely crushed it that day out of the blue. And it was like, less than 10 minutes and it was done. And I just happened to be positioned right for it at that time. But, I also remember when Mark Haynes, we got the Haynes bottom, God rest his soul, when we hit 666 on the S&P, I turned around and went long, like I put my whole net worth basically in the S&P, and I got it. I think when the S&P hit 1200, I got out, and I thought I was a rock star, and apparently I wasn't. So
sounds like a good trade to me. So if someone wants to get to know your company a little more, what should they do?
Well, you can check out forexanalytics.com. It's really a derivative of what I did at MB Trading and Ally Financial back when I was their chief currency strategist. We had a community of traders, and we when we eventually got bought by Ally Financial, I started Forex Analytics. We have a mobile app, we have a community. We offer analysis and a big community, and I do a lot of live broadcasts and a weekly week ahead video and a lot of daily broadcasts with some really great people at the Forex Analytics family. So
So you're saying both of us like to talk a lot to our people.
I don't like to say I talk a lot, but I end up talking a lot. And I guess in retrospect, I probably do enjoy talking, but I don't like hearing myself. But that's a funny thing, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to include Blake's bio in the video description below, so you can click on that and get to know a little bit more about Blake. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I always enjoy chatting with you.
Thanks, Lori. It's been a great pleasure, and best of luck to you and your community. And I'll see you in the Interverse.
Yeah, sounds great.